Every mystery has a voice. Few dare to listen.
Section 1. The corpse behind the Blackthorn door. The rain had been falling upon Blackthorn Manor for 3 hours with the monotonous determination of a man posting an unwelcome letter and refusing to leave until it had been acknowledged. By midnight, the gravel drive had become a black ribbon of mud. The yew trees were streaming, and the windows of the old house showed only occasional squares of yellow light. Lord Peter Wimsey arrived beneath an umbrella which had been designed for London pavements rather than Sussex weather. He regarded the manor, its gables and chimney stacks rising against the storm, and observed that Gothic architecture was chiefly distinguished from ordinary architecture by the fact that it encouraged people to die inconveniently. For those listening from somewhere beyond the rain-soaked boundaries of Blackthorn Manor, there is one question worth pausing over. Where are you watching from, and what time is it there right now? Put your place and local time in the comments. It is curious how differently midnight behaves in different parts of the world. Inside, Inspector Harold Pritchard was waiting in the hall. "You took your time, Lord Peter." "My dear Inspector, the weather has been attempting murder all the way from the station. I thought it prudent not to encourage it." Pritchard did not smile. He was a stout, weathered man with a clipped moustache and the patient expression of one who had spent 20 years discovering that human beings were considerably more troublesome than criminals. "Sir Julian Blackthorn is dead. So I gathered from the urgency of your telegram. People seldom summon me across half a county to discuss the roses." Library. Door was locked. Wimsey removed his gloves. How very reassuring. Pritchard stared at him. "You might at least pretend to take it seriously." "I am taking it seriously. I am merely reserving my alarm until I have established that the door deserves it." A tall figure approached from the shadows. Thomas Greaves, the butler, possessed the long, solemn face of a man who had spent his life in houses where nobody ever admitted to having broken anything. He bowed. "My lord, Inspector." "Greaves, you discovered the body?" "Yes, my lord." "And the door?" "Locked, my lord." From the inside, Greaves hesitated. "It appeared so." "An admirable qualification. Please retain it." They crossed the hall. The house was strangely quiet. Somewhere beyond the staircase a clock ticked with irritating confidence. Wind pressed against the windows, and from the eastern corridor came a vibration of glass. Mrs. Agnes Bell stood beside the library door, rigid beneath her spectacles. "I told Inspector Pritchard everything," she said. "Then I shall ask you nothing at present," said Wimsey. "It will save us both the embarrassment of discovering that everything has been omitted." Mrs. Bell compressed her lips. The library door stood closed. Pritchard produced a key. We had to force it. Indeed, the lock showed signs of violence. The wood around the frame was splintered where the constable had worked at it. Wimsey touched neither door nor lock. He merely looked. Then Pritchard opened it. The library was a long, book-lined room with dark oak shelves, green leather chairs, and a broad fireplace in which the last embers were dying. A reading lamp burned upon the desk. Papers lay in orderly piles. A bronze paperweight had fallen beside the hearth. Sir Julian Blackthorn lay on the carpet. He was on his side, one hand curled beneath him, silver hair dark against the rug. There was blood at the back of his head. Dr. Lionel Fane was kneeling beside him. "Dead for some time," said the doctor. "Blow to the skull. I should say somewhere between 10:30 and 11, perhaps nearer 11. Wimsey glanced at him. "On what do you base that?" Fane pointed towards the desk. "The clock." Upon the desk stood a small electric clock. Its hands showed precisely 10:48. Wimsey walked closer. He looked at the clock. He looked at Sir Julian. He looked again at the clock. 10:48, he murmured. "Yes, very precise." Fane frowned. "Clocks generally are. Some are. Others have the more modest virtue of being right." Pritchard sighed. "We have 3 people who heard or saw things around that time. No one saw anybody enter the library. The door was locked. The windows are shut." "Shut?" "Yes. Pity. It would have made matters almost interesting." Pritchard gave him a hard look. Wimsey's attention returned to the room. A dark curtain hung beside the tall window. Beyond it, rain moved like silver threads through the blackness. The desk lamp threw a yellow pool over the papers. On the far wall hung a portrait of an elderly Blackthorn ancestor, whose painted eyes seemed to regard the corpse with the stern disapproval reserved for descendants who have failed to maintain the family estate. "Who found him?" Wimsey asked. "Greaves. And before that?" No one entered. "Who last saw Sir Julian alive?" Pritchard opened his notebook. "We're still establishing that." "Splendid. Then we have not yet ruined the evidence with certainty." From the doorway came a faint sound. Clara Finch, the parlour maid, stood there pale and frightened. Pritchard turned. "You shouldn't be here. I only wanted to see. Go downstairs." Clara obeyed at once. Wimsey watched her disappear. "Who is she?" "Clara Finch. Maid." "Ah." He looked once more at the body. "Was Sir Julian expecting anyone tonight?" Pritchard hesitated. "We've heard something about a visitor." "What sort of visitor?" "No one knows." Wimsey raised an eyebrow. "That is an unusually efficient description." Pritchard closed his notebook. "Somebody was seen near the library." "By whom?" "We'll get to that." "Quite." Wimsey moved towards the desk. He did not touch the clock. He merely stood before it, head slightly inclined, listening to the rain and the faint ticking. Then he looked at the dead man. How very punctual of the dead. Outside, thunder rolled over Blackthorn Manor, and the library clock continued to tick toward midnight. Section 2, the house that knew nothing. By 7:30, Blackthorn Manor had recovered that particular silence which belongs to houses containing death. It was not the silence of grief. Grief, Wimsey thought, was noisy. This was the silence of people who had been instructed, without being told, that every word might become evidence. Breakfast was served beneath an offensively cheerful silver chandelier. Mrs. Agnes Bell moved between table and sideboard with rigid efficiency, determined to demonstrate that death, however inconvenient, had not abolished toast. Eleanor Blackthorn sat at the head of the table. She had dressed in black. Her hair was drawn back severely, and her pale face showed the strain of a sleepless night. Adrian Vale sat opposite her, stirring coffee he had plainly forgotten to drink. Beatrice Vale occupied the chair nearest the window. She was striking, with auburn hair and expressive eyes, and possessed the unfortunate theatrical habit of making even marmalade sound like the opening line of a tragedy. Inspector Harold Pritchard stood beside the fireplace. Lord Peter Wimsey entered carrying tea. "I perceive," he said, "that murder has failed to improve the breakfast." Mrs. Bell looked at him without amusement. "It rarely does, my lord. An excellent point. I shall make a note of it." He sat down. Pritchard opened his notebook. "We need to establish everyone's movements last night." "Of course, and I would appreciate straightforward answers." "Then you have come to the wrong house." Eleanor glanced at him. "You find this amusing?" "No, I find it English." Pritchard began with Eleanor. "You saw Sir Julian last night?" "Yes." "What time?" "I cannot give you the exact minute." "What did you discuss?" Eleanor's fingers tightened around her teacup. "Family matters. Specifically." She looked towards the window. "Sir Julian intended to alter his will." Adrian stopped stirring. Wimsey's eyes moved briefly towards him. Pritchard noticed. "In whose favor?" "I don't know, but you expected to be affected." "Yes. Were you angry?" Eleanor's expression hardened. "I was distressed." "No," she said quietly. "It isn't." "How long were you in the library?" "A while." "An argument?" "Yes." "Did you threaten him?" "No." "Did he threaten you?" Eleanor hesitated. "He said that certain people who had lived comfortably on his patience might discover its limits." Wimsey lifted one eyebrow. "A charming family custom." Pritchard ignored him. "What time did you leave?" "About 9:20. Pritchard made a note. "Mr. Vale." Adrian looked up. "Yes?" "You were Sir Julian's secretary?" "Yes." "You worked closely with him?" "Very." "You knew his moods?" "I knew his habits." "Which is not necessarily the same thing." "No." Adrian's right hand moved towards his cuff. A faint dark stain marked the side of his index finger. Wimsey glanced at it. "Printer's ink?" Adrian looked down. Yes. Do you often work with a pen? Constantly. Then I suppose one may forgive you for wearing the evidence. Pritchard continued. Where were you after 9:30? In the upstairs office. Alone? For most of the time. For most? I passed through the corridor. Did you see anyone? No. Beatrice gave a small, involuntary laugh. Everyone looked at her. I beg your pardon, she said. You find something amusing? Asked Pritchard. No. I find Adrian's memory remarkable. Adrian turned towards her. Beatrice, what? You know perfectly well where I was. Do I? The atmosphere altered. Wimsey took another sip of tea. He studied the sugar bowl. Mrs. Bell. The housekeeper came. What did you hear last night? Very little. That is your answer? Yes, Inspector. Nothing unusual? Mrs. Bell looked at Wimsey. Nothing. Did you hear a crash? No. Wimsey's eyes rested on her spectacles. Mrs. Bell shifted them higher upon her nose. Nothing at all, she repeated. Excellent, said Wimsey. It must be a peaceful household. Mrs. Bell did not answer. Thomas Greaves entered with fresh coffee. Pritchard continued. Did you see Major Hugh Rook leave? Yes, Inspector. When? Before 9. Precisely? 8:49. Wimsey looked up. That precise? The hall clock showed the time. And was the hall clock reliable? Greaves considered this. Usually. Another admirable qualification. I cannot say what I did not see, my lord. Very sensible. Clara Finch appeared at the doorway carrying a cloth. Pritchard called her in. You told us last night you saw someone near the library. Yes, Inspector. Who? I don't know. Man or woman? A man, I think. Did you see his face? No. Then how do you know it was a man? He was tall. Wimsey leaned back. An excellent beginning to the human race. Clara looked confused. What was he doing? Walking? Towards the library? I thought so. Or away? Clara hesitated. I don't know. Did he speak? No. Did you hear anything? No. Wimsey watched her. You are certain? Clara nodded. But I may have heard the door. What sort of sound? The latch. Wimsey's expression did not change. Very good. Pritchard closed his notebook. So we have a possible visitor, a quarrel, and several people who cannot remember what they were doing. Not several, said Wimsey. Pritchard stared. Wimsey glanced around the table. Nearly everyone. The servants withdrew. Beatrice left. Eleanor remained seated, staring at her cold tea. Adrian rose too quickly, nearly upsetting his cup. Excuse me. He crossed the room. Wimsey watched. Then Eleanor spoke. You think we are all lying. My dear Miss Blackthorn, if I thought that, I should be much more comfortable. Lies are generally tidier than memories. She looked at him. What do you think, then? Wimsey smiled faintly. I think this house has been awake all night, and nobody has yet decided what it is supposed to remember. From the corridor came Adrian Vale's measured footsteps, retreating towards the stairs. Wimsey listened until they vanished. Then he asked Clara whether the figure she saw was walking towards the library or away from it. I thought, she whispered, he was going towards it. Wimsey's face became still. Section 3, the Major with the bloody motive. At 10, Major Hugh Rook arrived at Blackthorn Manor in a motor car that sounded as though it objected to Sussex. He entered the passage without removing his hat, his white moustache bristling beneath a weathered face. Inspector Harold Pritchard met him. You know why you are here, Major. I imagine it has something to do with Blackthorn. Sir Julian is dead. I know that. Then perhaps you would care to explain your quarrel with him. Rook gave a short, humorless laugh. Quarrel? We had several. Lord Peter Wimsey stood beside the fireplace, examining a vase containing dead roses. He turned. An admirable economy of effort. Most men manage only one serious quarrel at a time. Rook stared at him. And you are? Lord Peter Wimsey. Ah. The Major's expression suggested he had heard the name and was uncertain whether to be impressed. I suppose you are here to solve the murder. I had hoped to inspect the rose bushes, but Inspector Pritchard has cruelly diverted me. Pritchard sighed. Major, Tell us what happened last night." Rook removed his gloves, one finger at a time. "I came to see Julian at 8:30. "Why? Money. Were you indebted to him?" "Profoundly." "Did he refuse you?" "He refused me the money." "Were you angry?" "I was furious." "Did you threaten him?" Rook looked directly at Pritchard. "Yes." The room contracted. "What did you say?" "That if he ruined me, I would make him regret it. And then I left." "What time?" "Before 9. Precisely 8:49. Pritchard looked down at his notes. "That agrees with Greaves." "Of course it does." Wimsey regarded him with mild interest. "Did you happen to notice the time when you left?" "The hall clock." "Did you look at your watch?" "No." "Then why remember 8:49? "Because the clock showed it." "Ah." Wimsey returned to the roses. Rook's mustache twitched. "You find something amusing?" "Not at all. I am merely developing an admiration for clocks. They seem to have become the most sociable members of the household." Pritchard intervened. "Did Sir Julian say anything before you left?" "Yes." "What?" "He said he had received a visitor." Wimsey's fingers paused against the vase. "Did he say who?" "No." "Did he say when the visitor was coming?" "No." "Did he appear frightened?" "Julian? Frightened?" Rook snorted. He would have regarded fear as an admission of inferior breeding. "Was he angry?" "He was always angry." "Was there anything unusual about him?" Rook thought. "Yes." "What?" "He had an envelope." "From whom?" "I don't know." "Did you see its contents?" "No." "Where was it?" "On his desk." Pritchard wrote this down. Wimsey asked, "And when you left, did Sir Julian remain alone?" "As far as I knew." "Did you see anyone in the hall?" "No." "Anyone near the library?" "No." "Anyone arriving?" Rook hesitated. "I heard the front door later." "Later than what?" "After I had gone." Pritchard looked up sharply. "You heard it from outside?" "No. From the drive. I had stopped beside my car because I had forgotten my gloves." "You came back?" "For less than a minute." "Why was this not mentioned before?" Rook's face darkened. "Because I did not think it mattered." "When was this?" "I cannot say." "After 9? "Yes." "Before 10? "Certainly." Wimsey tilted his head. "Did you see anyone?" "No." "Did you hear voices?" "No." "Then why mention the door?" "Because you asked." "An excellent reason." Rook replaced his gloves. "I suppose you think I killed him?" Pritchard did not answer. Rook looked from him to Wimsey. "I had motive. I had the quarrel. I threatened him. I was there." "You also left," said Wimsey. "That hardly makes me innocent." "No. It merely makes the evening more complicated." Major Rook gave him a hard stare. "You detectives enjoy complications, only the ones which arrive already wearing boots." Rook looked down. His boots were muddy. For one moment the room was silent. Pritchard glanced at them. "You walked from the drive?" "In the rain." "Your boots were muddy when you entered the house?" "Obviously." "Could you have returned to the library after leaving?" Rook's face reddened. "I have already told you I came back for my gloves. And then I drove home." "Anyone see you?" "My gardener." "Would he swear to it?" "He would tell you precisely what he saw and nothing more." "Convenient. Accurate." Rook turned towards the door. Wimsey spoke softly. "Major." Rook stopped. "You said Sir Julian had an envelope. Was there anything peculiar about it?" Rook considered. "Yes." "What?" "It was sealed. That is generally the point of envelopes." "No. I mean it had been sealed with black wax." Wimsey raised an eyebrow. "Black wax?" "Yes." "Anything else?" "A crest." "Whose?" Rook shook his head. "I did not recognize it." "Thank you." Rook left. The door closed behind him. Pritchard said, "Well?" Wimsey looked at the muddy marks the Major had left upon the passage floor. "Well, what? Isn't it obvious?" "My dear Inspector, obviousness is a dangerous luxury." He threatened Blackthorn. He needed money. He returned to the house. His boots are covered in mud. Indeed, and Sir Julian is dead. Also true. You cannot seriously tell me you see nothing there. Wimsey smiled. "I see several things, such as a man in debt, a murdered creditor, a threat made before witnesses, and a pair of muddy boots. That sounds like a murderer. It sounds, said Wimsey, like a successful piece of theater. Pritchard frowned. Then who is acting? Wimsey glanced towards the staircase. Ah, that, Inspector, would be telling. The storm pressed against the windows. Somewhere upstairs, a door closed. Neither man moved. At last Wimsey said, "Let us not arrest Shakespeare merely because somebody has quoted him badly." Pritchard stared. What has Shakespeare got to do with it? Nothing whatsoever. And with that, Wimsey walked away, leaving the inspector alone with the muddy footprints and a motive that seemed almost too perfect. Section 4. The clock that would not behave. By 11 o'clock the rain had settled into a steady whisper against the windows, and Blackthorn Manor had acquired the peculiar atmosphere of a respectable house pretending not to be frightened. Lord Peter Wimsey had spent the better part of an hour doing apparently useless things. He had inspected the library carpet, he had examined the curtains, he had asked Thomas Greaves whether Sir Julian preferred his tea poured before or after the milk. He had counted the steps from the staircase to the library. He had asked Mrs. Agnes Bell which servant polished the brass handles. Inspector Harold Pritchard watched all this with the patience of a man observing a distinguished guest rearrange the furniture during a funeral. "You are wasting time," he said. "On the contrary, I am wasting yours. Mine is being spent admirably." Wimsey knelt beside the library threshold. The door had been forced open the previous night. The splintered wood still showed where the police had worked at it. He looked at the floor. "Who usually cleans this passage?" "Greaves supervises it," said Pritchard. "I asked who cleans it. Clara Finch." "Does she sweep beneath the door?" "I suppose so." That was not the question. Pritchard called for Clara. She appeared almost immediately. "Do you clean this floor every morning?" "Yes, my lord." "Every inch?" "Yes." "Even beneath the library door?" "Yes." "Before breakfast?" "Yes." Wimsey nodded. "Excellent. Then you have probably noticed things nobody else notices." Clara looked uncertain whether this was praise. "I only do my work, a rare and dangerous virtue." He stood. "Now, the carpet." The library carpet was thick Persian wool, darkened by age and firelight. Wimsey walked slowly across it. "What are you looking for?" "Nothing." Pritchard sighed. "Then why look?" "Because nothing is frequently more informative than something." He stopped beside the desk. The small electric clock stood exactly where it had been found. Its hands still indicated 10:48. Wimsey bent towards it. "Who wound this?" "It is electric," said Pritchard. "Quite a splendid modern improvement upon clocks, since it permits them to lie without becoming tired." He touched the casing with one gloved finger. The clock gave a faint tremor. Wimsey's eyebrow rose. "What?" "Nothing." He turned to Greaves. "Does this clock ever misbehave?" "No, my lord. Never. Not to my knowledge. Has it been repaired?" "Once." "When?" "Several months ago." "By whom?" "A watchmaker in the village." "Do you know what was repaired?" "The mechanism, I believe." "Very satisfactory. Mechanisms are remarkably secretive things." Pritchard folded his arms. "You are suggesting the clock was tampered with?" Wimsey looked at him. "I am suggesting that clocks, like witnesses, should not be encouraged to become vain." He moved towards the door. "Greaves, lock it." The butler obeyed. The door clicked shut. "Now open it." Greaves turned the handle. Nothing happened. "Locked, my lord." "Use the key." Greaves produced it from his pocket and opened the door. Wimsey frowned slightly. "Again." Greaves repeated the process. This time Wimsey stepped closer. "Do not turn the key." Greaves looked puzzled. "My lord, close the door." He did so. "Now press the handle." Greaves did. The latch released. Pritchard stared, but the door was locked. "Yes, without the key, so it appears." Wimsey examined the edge of the door. "Old houses have peculiar manners. They dislike being asked to behave logically." Pritchard leaned towards him. "Could someone lock himself inside?" "Apparently." "Then how did the murderer leave?" Wimsey straightened. "Did I say there was a murderer?" Pritchard stared. "You are becoming intolerable, my dear Inspector. I have been intolerable for years." "Murder merely brings it into sharper focus." Wimsey turned to Greaves. "Does the latch always behave this way?" Not always, my lord. When does it? When the door is pulled firmly. Interesting. Is that important? Wimsey smiled. Everything is important. The difficulty is deciding when. He walked to the window. The curtains were heavy and dark green. One hung perfectly straight, the other was slightly displaced. Who opened these last night? Greaves answered. Sir Julian usually drew them himself. Usually, yes, my lord. And last night, I cannot say. Wimsey touched the curtain without moving it. Was the window open? No. Are you certain? Yes. Why? Because I closed it myself before dinner. Did you fasten it? Yes. Wimsey nodded. Good. He walked back towards the desk. On the carpet near the hearth lay a small depression in the pile. What stood here? Pritchard looked down. Nothing that I know of. Wimsey waited. Greaves said, The fire screen, perhaps. Perhaps. It may have been moved. By whom? I could not say. Of course. Wimsey studied the depression for another moment, then left it alone. He went into the hall and examined the clock there. Does this clock keep the same time as the library clock? Greaves looked surprised. They are normally within a minute. Normally. Yes, my lord. And tonight, I haven't checked. Wimsey took out his watch. He compared it with the hall clock, then with the library clock. He said nothing. Pritchard watched his face. Well, Wimsey returned his watch to his pocket. I find it very comforting. What? That a house containing a dead man should still possess disagreements about the hour. Pritchard groaned. Wimsey turned towards the library door. Greaves. Yes, my lord. How exactly does the library door behave when locked? The butler considered the question. Then he answered, with the solemnity of a witness delivering evidence in a cathedral. It catches, my lord. Wimsey regarded him for a moment. Catches? Yes, my lord. If pulled firmly, the spring engages and releases when the handle is pressed. Yes. How convenient. I have never considered it convenient. No, said Wimsey. Convenience is generally the last thing people consider before discovering its consequences. He glanced once at the clock, then away. Quite so, said Wimsey. Houses remember habits better than people remember promises, and that, too, may prove troublesome later. Section 5, 75 minutes of nothing. Rain had ceased by noon, leaving Blackthorn Manor washed and glistening beneath a colorless sky. Lord Peter Wimsey occupied the library table with 3 sheets of paper, a pencil, his watch, and the expression of a man engaged upon an especially dull crossword puzzle. Inspector Harold Pritchard stood opposite. What are you doing? Arithmetic. I can see that. Then your eyesight remains excellent. Wimsey drew a line down the center sheet. Let us begin with what we know. Pritchard pulled out his notebook. Sir Julian was seen alive by Miss Blackthorn shortly after 9, approximately 9:21. Yes, then Adrian Vale saw him, according to Vale, at 9:26. Good, and after that, Vale says he went upstairs, where he remained. For most of the evening. Wimsey nodded. An admirably elastic phrase. Pritchard frowned. You have something against the word most, only when it is used by people defending themselves, he wrote. 9:21, 9:26, 9:31. Then he stopped. You have missed something, Pritchard said. I am deliberately missing several things. It prevents premature accuracy. Pritchard leaned over the table. Dr. Fane places the death between 10:30 and 11. Yes. Because of the clock. Yes. And the clock says 10:48. Yes. Then what exactly are we testing? The hour. Pritchard waited. Wimsey continued. Suppose, merely as an intellectual exercise, that the clock is wrong. We have already discussed that. We have discussed its eccentricities. That is not the same thing. He rose and crossed to the desk. The electric clock remained at 10:48. Now let us consider the other clocks. They went into the hall. The large clock there stood silent. Pritchard looked at it. It stopped during the storm. When? About 10:15. About? Yes. Who knows that? Greaves. Did he see it stop? No. He noticed it had stopped. Afterwards? Yes. Wimsey nodded. Then the clock tells us only that something happened before he noticed it. He checked his watch. 10:27. Pritchard looked irritated. You are enjoying this immensely. Time is a splendid suspect. It cannot sue for libel. They returned to the library. Wimsey drew another line. Now the telephone. The call to Brighton? Precisely. Pritchard consulted his notes. Adrian Vale called Mr. Latham, the bookseller, at 10:42. The call lasted 7 minutes. So at 10:49, Vale was still speaking. Yes. Can Latham identify his voice? Certainly. Did he speak to anyone else? No. Was the call genuine? Yes. Then it appears Mr. Vale was upstairs at 10:42. Pritchard smiled. Exactly. Wimsey smiled back. Does it? Pritchard's smile disappeared. You said the call was genuine. I did. Then what is the difficulty? No difficulty. You're being evasive. I am being cautious. Wimsey wrote 10:42 to 10:49. Then beneath it he wrote 9:31 to 9:33. He stared at the two entries. Pritchard noticed. What does that mean? Nothing yet. You have been saying nothing for hours. It is an underappreciated word. The door opened. Adrian Vale entered, carrying several sheets of paper. Inspector, Lord Peter. Mr. Vale, said Wimsey. How industrious. I was asked to bring Sir Julian's correspondence. Excellent. Adrian placed the papers on the desk. Wimsey examined them. You typed these? Some. Recently? Yes. Your fingers are still stained. Adrian glanced at his hand. I have been working. Obviously. Wimsey picked up one letter. Dates? Yes. Sir Julian kept careful records. Extremely. Yet these dates do not appear to follow quite the same pattern. Adrian's expression tightened. What do you mean? Nothing conclusive. Pritchard looked impatient. Lord Peter, Wimsey raised a finger. One moment. He compared two sheets. This letter is dated the 14th. Yes. And this one the 17th. Yes. Yet the paper stock is identical. Adrian shrugged. Sir Julian bought paper in bulk. Of course. Wimsey returned the letters. Thank you. Adrian gathered them. As he turned, Wimsey asked, How long have you worked for Sir Julian? 4 years. And have you ever corrected his dates? No. Never. Not intentionally. Wimsey looked at him. Adrian smiled faintly. Everyone makes mistakes. Indeed. Adrian left. Pritchard waited until the door closed. Well? Wimsey picked up his pencil. Someone has been industrious. You said that before. Then perhaps repetition is another household habit. He began reconstructing the evening aloud, but without interpretation. 8:49. Major Rook leaves. Pritchard nodded. After 9. Eleanor has her quarrel. Yes. 26 past. Vale sees Sir Julian. According to Vale. 31. Unknown. Pritchard looked sharply at him. Why 31? Wimsey glanced at the page. I was merely placing the next minute, he continued. 10:15. Hall clock stops. Yes. 10:42. Telephone call begins. Yes. 10:49. Call ends. Yes. 10:48. Library clock. Correct. Wimsey looked up. That is interesting. Pritchard folded his arms. What is? Wimsey tapped the paper. Nothing. Again? Again. He gathered the sheets. Let us consider distances. The upstairs office to the telephone is 23 paces. From the library to the servants' corridor, 31. From the front door to the drive, perhaps 40. Pritchard stared. Why? Because people lie badly about time when they are not required to walk while doing it. He looked towards the staircase. Did anyone hear Mr. Vale using the telephone? No. Did anyone see him enter the office? Beatrice saw him in the corridor. When? About 10. About? Yes. Then the evidence is wonderfully precise. Pritchard sighed. You think the times are wrong? Wimsey put on his gloves. I think time is innocent until proven otherwise. He paused at the door. Pritchard watched him. You have found something. I have found that numbers have a habit of refusing to be bullied. That is not an answer. No, said Wimsey. It is a precaution. Answers are dangerous. He slipped the papers into his pocket. Let us leave the clocks alone for now. They may have to say when nobody is listening. He looked back at the sequence of figures. 8:49, 9:21, 9:26, 10:15, 10:42, 10:48, 10:49. He drew a single line beneath them. Well, he said softly, someone has been terribly industrious. Section 6, the manuscript in the wrong hands. By 4 o'clock the storm had moved eastward, leaving the sky over Blackthorn Manor the color of old pewter. Reverend Matthew Crowe arrived carrying a leather portfolio beneath his arm and the expression of a clergyman who had spent the afternoon deciding whether discretion was a virtue or merely cowardice wearing a respectable collar. Lord Peter Wimsey received him in the morning room. Reverend Crowe, you have brought documents. I believe they may be relevant. Then they are already more promising than most human beings. Inspector Harold Pritchard joined them. Crowe opened the portfolio and removed several sheets of yellowed paper. These belonged to Sir Julian's grandfather. Family papers. Yes, a dispute concerning the Blackthorn inheritance. Wimsey examined the first page without touching it. Medieval? Victorian. Ah, a period in which people committed forgery with excellent handwriting and called one another scoundrels in complete sentences. Crowe almost smiled. The matter concerned an illegitimate son. Pritchard leaned forward. Whose son? Julian's grandfather had an elder brother. That brother died abroad. There was a child. And? The child disappeared from the family record. Why? Crowe looked uncomfortable. Because the child was born outside marriage. Wimsey's expression remained light. Families have always possessed a remarkable talent for making inconvenient people disappear without actually killing them. Crowe continued. The document suggests that the child survived. More importantly, there was apparently a settlement intended for him. Was the settlement honored? No. Who prevented it? Sir Julian's grandfather. Pritchard frowned. And Sir Julian had discovered this? Recently. Where? In an old deed chest. Crowe produced another document. Wimsey read it. There was a long silence. What does it establish? Pritchard asked. Nothing by itself, said Wimsey. Crowe nodded. But Sir Julian believed it established something. About whom? The Reverend hesitated. About someone presently connected with this house. Pritchard's attention sharpened. Who? I cannot say. Wimsey returned the document. Excellent. A family secret with the decency to remain incomplete. Crowe looked at him. Sir Julian had become obsessed with the matter. He believed that someone had a claim upon Blackthorn Manor. An heir? Possibly. Did he identify this person? I believe so. Wimsey's eyebrow lifted. You believe? Sir Julian spoke to me 2 days ago. He said that he had discovered the truth and that he intended to settle the matter before the end of the week. Pritchard asked. Did he name the person? No. Why not? Because he did not trust me with it. Wimsey smiled. Sir Julian appears to have distributed trust with a miser's generosity. The door opened. Eleanor Blackthorn entered. She stopped when she saw the papers. You found them? Crowe turned. You knew? I knew Sir Julian had them. Did you know what they contained? No. Were you aware he intended to change his will? Yes. Were you frightened? Eleanor's eyes hardened. I was angry. Why? Because he had spent 30 years telling me that Blackthorn was my responsibility. Then, suddenly, he threatened to give it away. To whom? I don't know. Wimsey watched her carefully. You truly do not? No, she said. Sir Julian enjoyed control. If he discovered something that frightened another person, he would keep it secret until he could use it. And you? I was his niece. I learned early not to show him fear. There was a pause. Pritchard said, Did you see Adrian Vale after your conversation with Sir Julian? Yes. When? Later. Where? Near the stairs. Did he seem upset? Yes. Did he say why? No. Wimsey glanced towards the doorway. Mrs. Vale? Beatrice appeared there as though summoned by the mention of her name. She looked at the documents. Still digging up the dead? Crowe frowned. They are historical papers. History is merely gossip that has acquired footnotes. Wimsey smiled, a distinction dear to scholars. Beatrice entered. Pritchard said, "You knew about the family dispute?" "Only vaguely." "Did Adrian?" She looked at her husband's empty chair. "I don't know." Wimsey said nothing. Beatrice's fingers tightened around the back of a chair. "Adrian has always been afraid of being found out." The room became still. Pritchard leaned forward. "Found out about what?" "I didn't say. You implied it." "I regret speaking." "What does he hide?" Beatrice shook her head. "Ask him, Mrs. Volley." She looked directly at Wimsey. "He will tell you nothing." "Why?" "Because Adrian has spent years learning how to make ordinary things appear true." For the first time, Wimsey's expression changed perceptibly. Only an instant. Then he smiled. "An excellent accomplishment. It is generally useful in Parliament." Beatrice almost laughed, but the sound died. She turned away. Crow gathered the papers. "There is one other thing." He removed a folded sheet. "This was found among Sir Julian's private papers." Pritchard took it. The page contained a single typed sentence. "I shall see the final visitor tonight." No signature, no date. Wimsey read it. "Typed?" "Yes." "On Sir Julian's machine?" Crow nodded. "Did Sir Julian type?" "Occasionally." "Was this his wording?" "I cannot say." Pritchard looked satisfied. "That explains the visitor. Does it?" "Sir Julian expected someone, apparently. Perhaps the person who killed him." Wimsey folded his hands. "Perhaps." Pritchard stared. "You aren't going to say more?" "No." "Why?" "Because the sentence has not yet acquired the good manners to explain itself." He turned to the window. Outside, the last drops of rain trembled upon the blackthorn branches. Behind him, Beatrice spoke softly. Adrian was terrified of losing everything. Wimsey did not turn. "People are often most dangerous," he said, "when they have mistaken the loss of comfort for the loss of life." Nobody answered. On the table, the old manuscript lay open beneath the grey afternoon light, its faded ink preserving a secret that had survived generations. Wimsey glanced once at the typed sentence, then away, as though it had offered him an answer he had no intention of acknowledging yet to the assembled company present. And somewhere upstairs a typewriter waited in silence. Section 7. The visitor at the library. The rain had gone, but Blackthorn Manor remained damp with the memory of it. By evening the windows had begun to reflect the rooms rather than the garden, and every pane seemed to hold a second, darker house behind the first. Lord Peter Wimsey was in the servants' hall when Clara Finch came to him. She had been summoned twice and had answered neither summons. "I am sorry, my lord." "Don't be. Guilt is much more interesting than punctuality." Clara clasped her hands. "I remembered something." "Excellent. Memory is notoriously late, but occasionally it arrives bearing luggage." She looked towards the corridor. "It's about the man I saw." "The figure near the library?" "Yes." Wimsey waited. Clara swallowed. "He was carrying something." "What?" "I couldn't tell at first." "Try again." "A pair of gloves." Wimsey's expression did not change. "Were they dark?" "Yes." "Leather?" "I think so." "On his hands?" "No, my lord. He carried them." "Both?" "Yes." "Anything else?" "No." "Which hand?" "The left. Thank you." Clara seemed relieved. "Was he tall?" "Yes." "Did he walk quickly?" "No." "Was there anything unusual about his manner?" She hesitated. "He seemed as though he knew where he was going." "Most people do, until they arrive." She almost smiled. "When did you see him?" "I cannot say exactly." "Before or after the storm became loud?" "After." "And the library door?" "It was shut." "Did you see him touch it?" "No." "Did he look behind him?" "Yes." "At you?" "I don't know." "Why not?" His face was in shadow. Wimsey nodded. "Show me." They walked to the library. The door remained scarred from the police forcing it open. Wimsey stood where Clara had stood the previous night. "Here?" "Yes." "Look." He moved a few paces sideways. "Now." "Yes." He drew the curtain slightly. The dying daylight changed the angle of the room. Clara stared. "I never saw the window like that." "Quite." He released the curtain. It swung back into place. Did it look open? The window? Yes, not open, but the curtain moved. Was there wind? Not inside. Then what moved it? I don't know. Wimsey did not answer. Inspector Harold Pritchard entered. Have you found anything? Clara has remembered gloves. Pritchard looked unimpressed. Gloves. 2 of them, carried rather than worn. Could belong to anyone. Almost certainly. Pritchard examined the window. Still locked. Indeed, he looked at Clara. You said yesterday that the figure was walking towards the library. Yes, and now? I think he was. You think? I saw him only for a moment. Pritchard turned to Wimsey. This is hardly useful. Useful things are often disappointing. Wimsey looked at the floor. Near the skirting board, beneath the curtain, lay a tiny thread of dark wool. He saw it. He did not touch it. Pritchard did not notice. Clara did. What is that? Probably lint. From the curtain. Perhaps. He left it where it was. Pritchard frowned. Why don't you examine it? Because I have not yet been introduced. The inspector stared at him. You are impossible. Frequently. They returned to the hall. Thomas Greaves was polishing the silver tray. His face was expressionless. Greaves, said Wimsey. Did you see Sir Julian wearing gloves yesterday? No, my lord. Did he own black gloves? I believe so. Where did he keep them? In the library desk. Both pairs? One pair. Were they there after his death? Greaves paused. I cannot say. Did anyone ask you to look? No. Wimsey nodded. Thank you. Adrian Vale appeared at the staircase. Inspector. Pritchard turned. We need another word. Adrian descended. Wimsey looked at his hands. No gloves. Adrian noticed the glance. What is it? Nothing. You've been looking at my hands all day. A habit. Why? I admire hands. They are such honest objects. Adrian's smile was thin. Mine are hardly remarkable. On the contrary, Pritchard interrupted. Where were you between 10 and 11 last night? I told you. Upstairs. And after the telephone call. Still upstairs. Did you come downstairs? No. Clara stood behind Wimsey. Her face had gone pale. Adrian noticed her. What is wrong? Nothing. You look frightened. I am tired. Adrian watched her for a moment. Then he turned to Pritchard. Have you found anything? Not yet. Then perhaps we should stop frightening the servants with questions. Wimsey smiled. How considerate. Adrian looked at him. You seem amused. I am frequently amused by kindness appearing where it has not previously been observed. Adrian's expression hardened. He walked away. Clara whispered, That was him. Pritchard turned. What? The man. She pointed towards the staircase. The way he looked at me. Wimsey did not react. Clara, he said quietly, are you certain? Yes. You said you did not see his face. I didn't. Then what makes you certain? The gloves. Pritchard frowned. How can gloves identify a man? They were the same. The same as what? Clara looked frightened again. The gloves Mr. Vale carried this morning. Adrian had left his gloves on a small table beside the staircase. Wimsey walked over. They were dark leather. He did not touch them. He merely looked. Then he noticed that one glove had a narrow, pale scratch across the wrist. His expression remained unreadable. Interesting. Pritchard followed his gaze. What? Nothing that needs saying yet. He turned back towards the library. Come. They entered. Wimsey stood beside the desk, looking at the empty space where Sir Julian's papers had been arranged. Then he looked towards the window. Then towards the door. Then at the place where Clara had first seen the figure. The room seemed suddenly smaller. Pritchard said, You think the visitor matters? Wimsey adjusted his cuff. I think visitors generally do. That isn't an answer. No, said Wimsey. He looked at the darkened window. It is merely a warning against asking the wrong question. And for a moment the last visitor seemed less like a ghost than a fact waiting patiently to be recognized. It waited quietly there for daylight. Section 8. A rehearsal for the dead. At 8 o'clock that evening, Lord Peter Wimsey announced that murder was a form of theatre, and that the original production at Blackthorn Manor had been badly directed. Inspector Harold Pritchard stared at him across the library. I suppose you intend to improve it. Only the blocking. I wish you would speak English. My dear Pritchard, I am speaking English. It is the household that has been speaking melodrama. Thomas Greaves stood beside the door. Clara Finch hovered near the window. Mrs. Agnes Bell had been persuaded to remain, while Beatrice Vale watched from an armchair with the strained attention of someone expecting a magician to produce a rabbit from a coffin. Adrian Vale stood nearest the fireplace. "What exactly are we doing?" he asked. "Rehearsing. For what?" "The truth, perhaps, though I promise not to give it away." Wimsey handed Greaves a small notebook. "Stand here." The butler obeyed. "Now, Mrs. Bell, you will remain in the corridor. Clara, take your original position. Miss Vale, you will sit where you were after dinner. Mr. Vale, kindly stand upstairs." Adrian looked at him. "Why upstairs?" "Because you have told us that you were upstairs. It would be discourteous to deprive your alibi of its accustomed scenery." A faint color touched Adrian's face. Pritchard noticed. Wimsey did not. He walked into the library. "Now," he said, "we begin with the door." Greaves closed it. Wimsey approached from the corridor. "Do not use the key. I beg your pardon. Simply pull it firmly." Greaves did so. The latch caught. Pritchard stared. Wimsey opened the door by pressing the handle. "No key," he said. "Yes," said Pritchard, "an economical little device." He repeated the demonstration. Closed, caught, released, again. The mechanism worked perfectly. "Now imagine," said Wimsey, "that you are standing inside." He entered. "Imagine you have finished your business. You close the door." He pulled it. The latch clicked. "Then you walk away," Pritchard said, "leaving it apparently locked." "Precisely. From outside. Precisely. Without the key. Precisely." Pritchard looked at him. "You knew this yesterday." "I knew the door had manners. Today I am merely introducing you." Wimsey turned to the clock. "Now the second performer." He stood before the electric clock. "Everyone has accepted that this says 10:48. "Yes," said Pritchard, "and Dr. Fane based his estimate partly upon it." "Yes." "Very sensible." Wimsey bent slightly. He touched the casing. The minute hand trembled. Clara drew a breath. "Did you see that?" "Yes," said Pritchard. Wimsey withdrew his hand. "I did nothing. Nothing that I am prepared to discuss." Adrian shifted near the fireplace. Wimsey looked at him for one brief moment. Then he turned away. "Thomas, stand here." Greaves moved beside the desk. "Suppose you entered the room after Sir Julian had left it." Greaves frowned. "My lord, just play along." "Yes, my lord. Now look at the clock." Greaves did. "What time?" 10:48. "And if you believed the clock?" "I should assume it was 10:48. "Excellent. You are now in possession of the entire human race." Pritchard muttered something. Wimsey smiled. "Now, Clara," she came forward. "Stand where you stood last night." She obeyed. "Look towards the library." Clara did. Wimsey moved into the corridor. He drew the curtain slightly. The lamp in the library cast a narrow glow across his face, leaving the rest of him in shadow. "Could you identify me?" "No." "Could you tell whether I was approaching or leaving?" Clara hesitated. "I might think you were approaching." "Exactly." He stepped forward, then backward. From Clara's position, the difference was almost impossible to judge. Pritchard stared. "So the figure could have been either direction." "Apparently. And you have not told us who it was." "I have no intention of doing so," Adrian spoke. "Then what is the purpose of this?" Wimsey turned. "Theatre, Mr. Vale." "You said that already." "Then I am pleased you were listening." Beatrice gave a short laugh. Adrian looked at her. She stopped. Wimsey walked towards the window. "Now, Miss Vale, tell us what you heard." "A dull sound." "When?" "After 10:30, I think." "Could you identify it?" "No." "Could it have been the shutter?" "Yes." Wimsey opened the curtain. The window remained shut. He examined the outer frame from inside. "Interesting." Pritchard approached. "What?" Wimsey closed the curtain again. "The room has excellent acoustics." "That hardly seems remarkable." "Quite. Yet the servants' corridor has rather poor ones." He walked there and asked Mrs. Bell to stand beside him. "Can you hear the library door?" "No." "Even when it closes?" "No." Wimsey returned to the library. He closed the door. From the corridor came nothing. He opened it. Nothing. He smiled. Sound is a disappointing witness, Pritchard said. What does this prove? Nothing. You keep saying that. I remain stubbornly consistent. Wimsey moved back to the desk. He looked at the clock, then at the door, then at Clara, then at Adrian. His expression became unreadable. Again, he said. Pritchard groaned. Again? Certainly. The reconstruction began once more. Greaves crossed the hall. Clara turned. Beatrice rose. Mrs. Bell listened. Adrian remained upstairs. Wimsey watched every movement. He timed them silently. When the sequence ended, he stood beside the library door and said nothing. The storm had returned outside, faintly at first, then harder. Rain tapped against the glass. Pritchard waited. Well? Wimsey looked at him. Nothing yet. He entered the library alone. The others remained in the corridor. Wimsey approached the desk. The clock showed 10:48. He stood before it. Then he removed his monocle. He polished it carefully, replaced it, and looked once more at the clock. No one spoke. At last Wimsey turned towards the dark window. The reconstruction was finished. The house had yielded no confession, no ghost, and no convenient murderer. Only a sequence, only a door, only a clock. Wimsey stood alone beside the library clock. He removed his monocle. Now, he said, we may proceed to the unpleasant part. Section 9. The unmasking of the last visitor. At 9 o'clock, Lord Peter Wimsey assembled the household in the library. The rain had returned, beating upon the windows with the persistence of an accusation. Sir Julian's desk stood untouched. The bronze paperweight beside the hearth and the little electric clock continued to display 10:48. Inspector Harold Pritchard closed the door. Now, he said, perhaps you will finally tell us what you have discovered. Wimsey looked around the room. I shall, but first, let us agree upon one small point. A clock is not a witness merely because it has hands. Adrian Vale stood beside Beatrice. Eleanor remained near the bookcase. Major Hugh Rook had folded his arms. Dr. Lionel Fane looked impatient. Thomas Greaves and Mrs. Agnes Bell stood together, while Clara Finch kept close to the wall. Wimsey pointed towards the desk. Everyone has assumed that Sir Julian died at approximately 10:48. Dr. Fane made his estimate from the condition of the body, but he was influenced by this clock. The clock, however, was not telling the truth. Pritchard frowned. You said its minute hand was loose. Precisely. It could be advanced deliberately. At some point after the murder, someone moved it forward to 10:48. Adrian shifted. Wimsey continued. The murder itself occurred at approximately 9:31 p.m. Sir Julian was alive at 9:26 when Mr. Vale saw him. 5 minutes later, he was struck with a bronze paperweight. He did not die instantly. The fatal interval ended at approximately 9:33. Dr. Fane stared. That is impossible. No, doctor. Merely inconvenient. He turned to Pritchard. Consider Eleanor Blackthorn. She left the library at approximately 9:21. Major Rook had already departed the house at 8:49. Thus neither can have been present when Sir Julian was attacked. Rook exhaled sharply. So you believe me? I believe the clock and the geography. They are less sentimental than witnesses. Wimsey moved towards the desk. Now we come to the murderer. The room became still. After striking Sir Julian, the killer remained in the library long enough to discover that the victim was dying. He then advanced the clock from the true time to 10:48, removed an incriminating letter, and substituted an older document. He then left the room and allowed the spring latch to catch. Pritchard said. So the locked door was manufactured. Exactly. No key was required. The door could be closed from outside and would catch automatically. He turned towards Adrian. You knew that mechanism, Mr. Vale. Adrian's face tightened. I knew the door. You also knew Sir Julian's correspondence. Obviously, I was his secretary, and that was precisely the difficulty. Wimsey took the hidden letter from his pocket. Sir Julian had discovered that dates on his correspondence had been altered. The person responsible was Mr. Vale. Adrian laughed once. That proves nothing. No, Not by itself. Wimsey placed the letter on the desk, but it supplies the motive. Sir Julian intended to expose you. Beatrice closed her eyes. Adrian looked at her. You told him? No, she whispered. Wimsey continued. You then constructed an alibi. At approximately 9:47, you deliberately created a disturbance in the servants' corridor. Mrs. Bell heard the crash. You told her you had been working upstairs. Mrs. Bell stared. I thought. Yes, said Wimsey gently. You thought he was where he said he was. He turned towards the stairs. At 10:07, Mrs. Vale saw her husband in the corridor. That observation strengthened the alibi. At 10:42, Mr. Vale telephoned the Brighton bookseller. The call was genuine and lasted 7 minutes. Pritchard nodded. So he really was upstairs. At 10:42, yes, and therefore nothing. The murder had been over for more than an hour. Pritchard glanced towards the paperweight and the letter. The original was hidden beneath the blotter. It named misconduct. Adrian removed it after the blow and replaced it with a harmless letter. That was why the desk appeared orderly. Disorder would have suggested panic. Order suggested routine. Wimsey gave a faint smile. Human beings, Inspector, are forever arranging furniture while the house burns. Silence followed. Wimsey walked to the window. Now we reached the last visitor. Clara looked up. You saw him? Yes. Not Sir Julian, Mr. Vale. Adrian shook his head. You couldn't see my face. No, but you carried your gloves. Wimsey looked at Clara. She noticed what mattered. The figure was carrying a pair of dark gloves rather than wearing them. Later, Mr. Vale possessed the same pair. More importantly, Clara saw the figure moving towards the library, Pritchard said. But if Adrian had already killed Sir Julian, why return? To retrieve what he had left behind. Adrian went pale. The gloves, Wimsey nodded, and the final visitor note. He lifted the typed sheet. I shall see the final visitor tonight. Sir Julian did not type this as a prophecy. It was placed among his papers after his death, designed to make us imagine a visitor arriving late in the evening. Pritchard looked at Adrian. You typed it. I did not. Your habit of altering ordinary things to make them appear true betrayed you. Wimsey's voice remained calm. The telephone call was real. The sighting was real. The clock was real. The hall clock really stopped. Major Rook really threatened Sir Julian. Eleanor really quarreled with him. Every piece of evidence was genuine in isolation. He paused. The deception lay in making genuine events belong to the wrong hour. Adrian stared at him. Wimsey stepped closer. You did not manufacture an alibi for the murder, Mr. Vale. You manufactured a murder for your alibi. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then Adrian sank into a chair. Pritchard approached him. Adrian Vale, I am arresting you on suspicion of the murder of Sir Julian Blackthorn. Adrian looked at the clock, 10:48. It was supposed to be perfect. Wimsey replaced his monocle. My dear fellow, perfection is generally betrayed by arithmetic. The room remained silent as the clock ticked on, finally keeping time for everyone. For perhaps half a minute after Inspector Harold Pritchard announced the arrest, nobody moved. The library clock continued its stubborn display of 10:48, like an elderly witness determined to repeat a lie merely because it had already committed itself to it. Adrian Vale sat in the chair beside the fireplace. You cannot prove it, he said. Lord Peter Wimsey regarded him pleasantly. Pritchard said, Stand up. Adrian did not move. I tell you, I did not kill him. No? Said Wimsey. No. Then you will have no objection to explaining the gloves. Adrian looked down. His hands were empty. What gloves? The black leather pair. I own several pairs, indeed, but Clara Finch saw a man carrying a pair towards the library. Later, your own gloves were found beside the staircase. One bore the same pale scratch she had noticed. I could have dropped them anywhere. Quite. Wimsey walked to the desk. And you could have been upstairs at 10:42. I was. Yes. I spoke to Latham. Yes. The call proves it. It proves that you were there then. Adrian's eyes narrowed. Then you admit the call. Certainly. I have no objection to facts merely because they are inconvenient, Pritchard said. You expect us to believe you killed Sir Julian at 9:30 and then spent an hour constructing an alibi? No. Adrian's voice cracked. I was upstairs. Wimsey turned. After the murder. Adrian stared at him. You cannot know that. I can know that the murder occurred at 9:31. I can know that your telephone call began at 10:42. I can know that your supposed continuous presence upstairs is supported only by a series of observations which begin after the crime. The distinction mattered because the murder had already happened before the machinery of his alibi began to move into place around him that evening. Pritchard nodded slowly. Adrian stood. You are guessing? No. Then tell me how you know. Wimsey smiled faintly. Because your alibi is too honest. Adrian looked bewildered. The telephone call was genuine. Your wife saw you. The corridor disturbance was genuine. Nothing needed to be forged except the hour. That is absurd. Is it? Wimsey lifted the small electric clock. This was moved forward. He set it down. You knew that the police would accept 10:48 as significant. You knew Dr. Fane would place the death near that time. You therefore gave yourself an hour in which to become visibly innocent. Adrian's face had gone gray. Beatrice whispered, Adrian. He looked at her. You knew. I suspected. You said nothing. I was afraid. His expression changed. For me. For everyone. Adrian laughed bitterly. Always the same. Everyone afraid of Sir Julian. Everyone afraid of what he might discover. Wimsey said nothing. Adrian looked towards the desk. He was going to destroy me. Pritchard's voice hardened. Why? Adrian swallowed. The papers. The inheritance papers. Yes. And the correspondence. Yes. What did they reveal? Adrian lowered his head. That I had altered several dates. For what purpose? To conceal money. Pritchard's expression changed. Embezzlement. Not at first. Then what? Adrian looked at Beatrice. Debts. She closed her eyes. I borrowed against payments that had not yet been made. Then I altered the records to conceal the shortages. I meant to replace everything. And Sir Julian discovered it. Yes. When? 3 days ago. And he threatened to expose you? He said I would go to prison. The room became very quiet. Wimsey spoke gently. So you killed him? Adrian shook his head. I meant only to frighten him. Pritchard stepped forward. What happened? He was standing beside the desk. He had the papers in his hand. He said he would summon the police in the morning. Adrian's voice trembled. I took the paperweight. Beatrice covered her mouth. I struck him once. And then? I thought he was dead. But he was not. No. Adrian stared at the floor. He moved. He tried to speak. I struck him again. Pritchard wrote something in his notebook. Then you staged the scene. Yes. How? I moved the clock. I took the papers. I put another letter on the desk. I closed the door. And the note about the final visitor. Adrian gave a hollow laugh. I typed it earlier. Why? To make it seem that someone was coming, someone who might have killed him later. Yes. Wimsey's expression hardened slightly. And Major Rook? I knew the police would suspect him. You used his threat. Yes. The muddy boots? I knew he had been outside. Another convenient fact. Adrian nodded. I thought everything would point towards him. Wimsey looked at the Major. I fear you have been cast in a rather unflattering role, Rook grunted. I've had worse. For the first time, the atmosphere loosened. Then Adrian said, But there is one thing you cannot explain. Wimsey turned. What? The figure Clara saw. I have explained it. No. You have assumed it was me. Yes. But she could not see my face. No. She could not know. She knew the gloves. Adrian's lips tightened. The gloves prove nothing. They prove you were carrying them. So? So the figure was walking away from the library, not towards it. Adrian froze. Clara stared. What? Wimsey smiled. The curtain. He pointed towards the window. During our rehearsal, we discovered that the reflected light reversed the apparent direction of movement. Clara saw the figure leaving the library, but believed him to be approaching it. Pritchard looked astonished. Then why would Adrian leave after the murder? To retrieve the original paper he had overlooked. Adrian closed his eyes. Wimsey continued quietly. That was your final mistake. You returned because you feared you had left evidence behind. You carried the gloves because you did not wish to leave fingerprints. Clara saw you. Adrian sank back into the chair. I forgot about her. Yes. His shoulders collapsed. I was so frightened. Wimsey's voice softened. That is usually when people become careless. Pritchard stepped forward and took Adrian's arms. This time, Adrian did not resist. As he was led towards the door, he stopped beside Beatrice. I am sorry. She looked at him for a long moment. So am I. The door opened. Adrian disappeared into the corridor. Wimsey remained beside the fireplace. Pritchard returned briefly. You were certain? No. You looked certain. My dear Inspector, certainty is merely confidence wearing a waistcoat. Pritchard smiled despite himself. And the Major? Embarrassed. The others? Relieved. And you? Wimsey glanced at the clock. Hungry. Pritchard laughed. Outside, the rain finally stopped. Inside Blackthorn Manor, the last visitor had ceased to be a mystery. He had become a man. Morning came to Blackthorn Manor with an indecent brightness. After 3 days of rain, the garden appeared almost offensively cheerful. Drops glittered upon the blackthorn branches, rooks quarreled in the elms, and somewhere beyond the stable-yard, a groom was whistling a tune so jaunty that Lord Peter Wimsey considered sending him indoors on grounds of public decency. The library, however, remained solemn. Sir Julian's chair stood beside the desk. The bronze paperweight had been removed. The papers had been gathered into neat bundles for the police, and the electric clock at last had been disconnected. Inspector Harold Pritchard stood by the window. I have never known a house so determined to complicate a murder. Wimsey adjusted his cuff. Country houses are like families. They accumulate secrets until there is no room left for the furniture. Pritchard glanced at the desk. And you were right about the central deception. I usually am. You might occasionally pretend humility. I did once. It was mistaken for incompetence. Pritchard laughed. They walked into the hall. Major Hugh Rook was preparing to leave. His coat was buttoned, his gloves in his pocket, and his military dignity had recovered somewhat from the indignity of having appeared for several hours to be the obvious murderer. He approached Wimsey. I owe you an apology. My dear Major, you owe me nothing. I accused you of treating the matter as entertainment. I do that professionally. Rook almost smiled. Then his expression became serious. You saved me from being charged. Inspector Pritchard saved you. I merely prevented him from becoming enthusiastic. Pritchard coughed. Rook looked towards the staircase. What happens to Blackthorn now? That depends upon the family. The family is rather short of agreement. Most families are. Rook put on his hat. Sir Julian was a difficult man. Yes, but he did not deserve to die. No. The Major hesitated. Vale frightened me. Why? Because he seemed so ordinary. Wimsey looked at him. That is one of the more dangerous forms of disguise. Rook nodded and departed. Eleanor Blackthorn entered from the morning room. She looked tired, but relieved. Lord Peter, Miss Blackthorn, thank you. Please don't. She smiled faintly. You dislike gratitude. I dislike emotional obligations before breakfast. She laughed. What will happen to the estate? Your uncle's affairs will be settled according to law. And the inheritance papers? They will be examined. Do you think the old family secret mattered? Wimsey paused. Yes. In what way? It mattered because people believed it mattered. She considered that. That's a rather bleak answer. Human beings are wonderfully efficient at making their own ghosts. Eleanor looked towards the library. I used to think Blackthorn was haunted. Was it? She smiled. No. Good. Ghosts are notoriously bad at providing evidence. She left him. Wimsey remained in the hall. Thomas Greaves appeared carrying a tray. Tea, my lord. Bless you, Greaves. Civilization survives. Greaves poured. Wimsey accepted the cup. Tell me, Greaves, what do you think of the whole affair? The butler considered. I think, my lord, that the house will be quieter now. Will it? Yes. Why? Because everyone has said what they know. Wimsey looked at him. That is a very dangerous assumption. Greaves permitted himself the smallest smile. Perhaps, my lord. He withdrew. Wimsey drank his tea. Pritchard watched him. You think there are still secrets? Inspector, there are always secrets. Then why stop? Because a detective must know when the truth has become sufficient. Pritchard nodded. Outside, a motor car sounded on the road. Wimsey walked towards the front door. Before leaving, he turned once more towards the library. The room looked entirely ordinary. That was perhaps the most unsettling thing about it. A murder had taken place there. A man had lied about the hour. Another man had died believing that his private secrets could still control the living. A household had mistaken appearances for certainty, and a single clock had persuaded everyone to believe what they wanted to believe. Yet now the room contained nothing supernatural, only furniture, only paper, only silence. Wimsey smiled. Tempus fugit. Pritchard raised an eyebrow. Time flies? Indeed. He put on his hat. And in this house it has been exceedingly badly behaved. They stepped outside. The morning air was cool and clean. Blackthorn Manor stood behind them, its dark windows reflecting the pale sky. Pritchard paused beside the motor car. One last question. Of course. Which clue fooled you? Wimsey looked surprised. Fooled me? For a time. My dear Pritchard, I am a detective. I am not obliged to admit that anything ever fools me. That means yes. Wimsey smiled. The clock. The clock. Yes, not because it lied, because everyone was so eager to believe it. He opened the car door. That is the difficulty with evidence. It rarely deceives us by itself. We do the deceiving for it. He climbed inside. Pritchard stood by the gate. Will you return? Certainly. When? When someone murders another member of the English aristocracy in a sufficiently irritating manner. Pritchard laughed. That could take years. Then I shall have to occupy myself with lunch. The car moved slowly down the drive. Wimsey looked back once. Blackthorn Manor grew smaller behind the trees. The blackthorn branches stirred in the morning wind. For a moment, the house seemed to watch him go. Then the illusion passed. There was no ghost at Blackthorn Manor. Only memory, only guilt, only people. And, in the end, that was quite enough. Wimsey settled back against the seat and closed his eyes. After all, he murmured, the dead keep very poor company. It is the living who make the noise. The motor car disappeared around the bend. Blackthorn Manor stood silent beneath the clearing sky. And for the first time since the murder, nobody inside was waiting for a visitor. If you enjoyed the case, tell us in the comments which clue fooled you most, or share your theory. Subscribe for the next case.